Good afternoon. It's very easy to recognize the UNESCO people, those wearing a tie. And we are just two here, Guillermo Canella and myself. When we walked through the campus yesterday, everybody was looking at us at a very strange way. Are we here to interview some candidates? Are we here, I don't know, bankers or financial service executives? No, we are the UNESCO people. You know what is hard at this time of the day, on Friday afternoon, after lunch in a packed room? What is hard or challenging for any speaker? Exactly, keeping you awake, yes. Help you fight the nap syndrome. I used to be for more than 3 decades university professor and dean, and a colleague of mine used to tell his MBA students at similar time of the day, he used to say, you and I have 2 tasks to do. I have the task of speaking, you have the task of listening. Please let me know in case you finish doing your task first. So in case you stop listening and you feel about to fall asleep and take that little nap, let me know so I can push the stop button at this end. Since this event is about languages, let me confess that I speak few languages, but all of them with a foreign accent, including my mother tongue. Believe it or not. When I go back home for a vacation and speak the local dialect, people ask me what country I come from, which is always a very strange feeling to have. Now, let me stop this, and let me be the UNESCO Assistant Director General. And this is how we give speeches. There is a team that writes a script, and then I read it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to address you this afternoon in this major event, hosted by Stanford University, organized by Silicon. And first of all, of course, I want to warmly thank Professor Thomas, or Tom, as he goes, Mulani, and his team, including Andre Go and the other members of the team, for the leadership, for the organization, and to have such impressive and esteemed speakers and participants at this event. This is very encouraging for us because UNESCO has been for some time now trying to bring its modest brick to this construction, trying to contribute to fostering multilingualism, linguistic diversity, including in cyberspace. And this is what I'll try to share with you. It's, of course, I know it's a shared commitment by all of us. As the saying goes, we should leave no language behind. And this is what we are trying to achieve, including in cyberspace. In particular, how can we support less resourced languages, indigenous languages, disadvantaged languages, including online? My home country is Tunisia. How much content in Arabic do you think is online? If I look at the Arab countries, that's roughly over 500 million people. How much content is present online? Any guess? 0.3%. I'm not talking about indigenous languages. I'm not talking about less resourced languages. Gulf countries have the means, obviously. This is one of the 6 official United Nations languages, Arabic. Online, 0.3%. So again, this is just an example because this is my community, right? But of course, we heard this morning excellent testimonies about this issue, but also some of the technical work that is, of course, advancing. I think the answer of Birgit, if I don't misspell her name or mispronounce her name, to the very last question before the coffee break. How do you foster these languages? Do you talk to the elderly who own the language, who are the custodians of that culture, of that civilization, or do you reach to the younger people, the generations to come, who are digitally savvy and want to see their native indigenous languages online? To whom do you talk? And how can you bridge that gap across generations? What a wonderful question, what a wonderful issue that we all need to work on. In addition, of course, to the demonstrations that we have seen this morning from Mexico, from Brazil, the work that our colleague, of course, Tex Mexon presented, and I know that he and others mentioned the work of UNESCO, including in the context of the International Decade of indigenous languages 2022-2032. So what I would like to do, I'm supposed to advance slides, otherwise they'll be still on slide 1 by the end of my talk. Yeah. So let me talk about this, what you call the 4A approach, which I think in a way summarizes our commitment at UNESCO to digital inclusion. Number 1, advocate. Without advocacy, we cannot move the needle. We cannot convince our member states, and UNESCO has 194 member states. So advocacy hopefully leads to some action and therefore to some impact on the ground. But we start with advocacy. And this is very important in light of the stark imbalance that we see in online linguistic representation and also the barriers preventing access to information, especially for low-resourced languages. This morning we talked about sometimes lack of proper keyboards, lack of software, lack of local or appropriate, I should say, user interfaces. So these are some of the barriers, and delighted to see the progress being made, the commitment, and this gives us all hope that we can bridge this linguistic divide. We need to align, especially with the global policy frameworks, and UNESCO, you may know, has voted, or its member states, the 194, have voted back in 2003, the UNESCO recommendation for the promotion and use of multilingualism and universal access to cyberspace. This is very important, and it's, again, this alignment, such a global framework shared by all, and we'll talk more specifically about actions that we have done and the countries that have implemented this 2003 UNESCO global recommendation. Thirdly, of course, time is of the essence, and we need to accelerate our efforts to leverage, in particular, language technologies, which are getting very powerful, especially in view of artificial intelligence and generative AI, how we can leverage these language technologies to support also the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. We have only 4 years remaining to 2030 to achieve those Sustainable Development Goals. And how can we keep up with the fast technological changes? Before we know it, there is already, not before we know it, there is already the open generative AI. There is also the artificial general knowledge, AGI, people are talking about today. So things, of course, are picking up speed. The traditional cycle of technological evolution is passé. You know how long it took, example, ChatGPT to reach 100 million users? A couple of months. If you look at PCs and mobile phones and previous technologies, it took years to reach 100 million users. Today, time is shrinking, and of course, we have to keep up with that. Affordability, the 4A, the fourth A is very important. How can we make it, how can we make these resources, these technologies, not only accessible, but economically, financially affordable for all? And this is very, very much important, regardless of geography, regardless of community, regardless of language, regardless of economic conditions. So this is my introduction. Now let me, I mentioned again the gap that we see online. You see here again, languages most frequently used for web content. English makes up more than half of those languages. This is as of now, as of a year ago, January 2024. And great, I mean, for those who are well educated, yes, English is their primary, secondary, or tertiary language, but you know, there are billions of people who don't speak a word of English, and they feel therefore excluded from the digital space. So we realize that linguistic diversity, it's not only accessing information, it's also about cultural identity. It is also about knowledge exchange. I mean, if generative AI did something very positive, democratizing access to knowledge, not access to data, not just access to information, but access to knowledge. And I think this is the new frontier in artificial intelligence in particular. So many languages remain on the fringes of the digital revolution. 90% of the content is produced in just 12 languages. 90% of online content exists only in 12 languages. And obviously, this leaves several thousand languages out of cyberspace. Our work at UNESCO, which is called the UNESCO World Atlas of Languages, is a repository of over 8,000 languages. So that is the state of the possible. So AI, yes, it offers us opportunities, but we are very much aware of the challenges and the risks that we need to mitigate, especially when it comes to preserving and promoting linguistic diversity. So to do that, we need to overcome the data scarcity issue, because we know very much that these algorithms are trained on data. Data does not necessarily exist online in many languages. That's a major obstacle. But also, how can we capture the complexity of cultural nuances? It's not just about expression or linguistic representation, but of course there are some cultural nuances and they are quite complex. And how can we avoid algorithmic biases, including gender biases? And our recent study at UNESCO revealed that these large language models in generative AI, they don't only replicate gender biases that exist in the offline world, they amplify them. Gender biases are being amplified online, not just mirrored online. And that's, of course, something that we have to address. In addition to ethical issues, and UNESCO has issued 4 years ago the first global normative standard called the UNESCO Recommendation on the Ethics of Artificial Intelligence, 2021. The work for that started back in 2018. So if you talk about 2021, that's a couple of years before even the advent of ChatGPT and generative AI. And the UNESCO raised the flag to say, watch out. AI has to be used ethically, responsibly. So today we are pleased to see 60 countries among the member states of UNESCO implementing the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI. So this is something very, very important, because of course what we want an AI-driven future that empowers all communities, that of course safeguards also the linguistic heritage of humanity as a whole. I need to advance some slides, okay. So it was mentioned a few times this morning, the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, 2022-2032, decided by the United Nations General Assembly. At UNESCO, we are honored to be asked to be entrusted with the implementation of this International Decade in partnership with many other stakeholders. So this is something that is already in place. We have several countries that developed their national action plans in the context of this International Decade. We have even some regional action plans like the one for Africa. We have today the Africa Regional Action Plan in line with the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. This is very important because we need these collective efforts in a coordinated manner. We need countries, governments, commitment, engagement, and of course, walking the talk. Otherwise, the hope created by this decade may not materialize. And many of you know that this decade did not come out of the blue. Initially, it was 2019 as the international year. It was a year initially for indigenous languages. But that has led to some very positive results, to the point that the General Assembly of the UN decided, let's make it now a decade, 2022-2032. So this is one major initiative that has been ongoing so far, and obviously we need here to join forces. I'll be delighted to work with you on initiatives, on projects, because we still have clearly 7 years running for this decade. since, as I said, it goes until 2032. Let me tell you here some other important events or initiatives. I mentioned the decades. I would like to mention again the 2003 UNESCO recommendation concerning promoting multilingualism in cyberspace. And this one, as I said, is already implemented in a number of countries. But we would like to encourage more governments to implement this important recommendation. We have been working with ICANN, and I'm sure that all of you know ICANN, which is in charge, of course, of the internet. We have the internet domain names, email addresses. So we have been working with them, and actually tomorrow morning I have a meeting with some of their representatives. I think they're in the room, possibly. So with ICANN, what we would like to do is to advance the concept of universal acceptance. This is something very important. It's an initiative that ensures that the internet is truly global and inclusive by enabling websites, email systems, and other online resources and infrastructure to accept public domain names and email addresses in all scripts, in all languages. This is what is new. Because, of course, if you don't allow more scripts and more languages, then you don't have a website, you don't have an email address, and therefore you are not present online. And who can do that? ICANN is in a premium position to help move the needle and bring about positive change. So this is one of the partnerships that UNESCO has been having for a number of years now, but we have other partnerships like the one with Masterword. Masterword is a language services company for the Mayan languages preservation and digitization. So we work with them very much to expand digital access for Mayan communities. Oops, that's it, that's the slide. Last December, as an example, the project launched the Universal Mayan, Kekshi, and Kichi keyboards for Android, which empowered millions of Mayan language speakers across North and Central America to connect to digital services through handheld devices. We believe this is an important example, and it's a contribution to promoting multilingualism and linguistic diversity. But obviously, we need more of this, especially in terms of linguistic data, which is, as I said before, why UNESCO decided to develop the Word Atlas of Languages, which has exactly 8,324 languages, including sign and indigenous languages. And this obviously aligns nicely with the universal acceptance, which I mentioned earlier. I mentioned this recommendation a minute ago, the 2021 UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, which, as I said, currently is being implemented in 60 countries on 5 continents. This is very important because, as I said, we need to provide the context for cultural content, data to be adequately represented online with a fair, responsible, and ethical respect of human rights, among others. This is anchored in the full respect of international human rights standards. So that's our base, and that's our starting point. There is another recommendation I would like to mention from UNESCO, 2021, a recommendation on open science. This is also a very important development because we believe it helps bridge the technological and the knowledge divides between and within countries. And when I say within countries, of course, I'm referring also to some communities, including indigenous communities. So it provides a common shared framework of values, of principles, of standards for open science at the global level. It also outlines actions to ensure fair, equitable, open access to data and knowledge for all. These actions are happening at the local, national, international, and regional levels, And again, we have a number of member states of UNESCO already implementing the principles of the 2021 recommendation on open sciences. One of the elements here, of course, is recognizing the importance of open source artificial intelligence, open source AI models as a way to foster innovation, transparency, but also inclusivity going forward. One last development to mention is the United Nations Pact for the Future, which was voted by all member states last September in New York. So within the UN Pact for the Future, there is one important pillar called the GDC, the Global Digital Compact. This is going to be our digital roadmap for the years to come, approved by all member states of the United Nations. So this pact acknowledges the crucial role of data and the significance of open data across languages. It recognizes, and I'm going to read here one paragraph, which is part of what was approved. It says, digital public goods, which include open source software, open data, and open AI models, these digital public goods empower societies and individuals to direct digital technologies to their development needs and facilitate digital cooperation worldwide. So it's a formal commitment which goes very much along the Sustainable Development Goals, number 8, number 9, and number 10, which all share the ultimate goal of benefiting society through digital technologies. So they do advocate also for the creation of multilingual digital content to enhance the accessibility to digital services and to internet networks, but also improve digital literacy to empower communities, including speakers of indigenous or low-resourced languages. Let me, I'm getting close to the end, let me here mention a few practical solutions for linguistic inclusion, which we have been working on. So first of all, how can we disseminate digital content across languages? This includes supporting communities in creating Wikipedia entries, educational resources. We have a major program called OER, Open Educational Resources. Very, very important in terms of education. When I used to teach as a professor and I assign a textbook or one of my books, some schools, universities said, we simply cannot afford that. It costs $130 per copy. And you are teaching a few hundred students. Who will pay for that? Students cannot pay, university cannot pay. So what they do, they use a book of mine from 10 years before. And I'm teaching digital strategy. I say, well, a textbook is supposed to support the course and the learning, not to hinder that process. If you use a book from 10 years earlier. Why? Because it became available or it's now in public domain. So the issue of open education resources. How can we offer up-to-date, relevant, value-adding, learning-wise material through digital platforms to everybody? That's the concept of open educational resources. It's like open software in the software business. So there are some small companies that couldn't buy software as a product, but they go to use open software, Linux and others, right? And I have here somebody who works for Linux who happened to be a student of mine, a victim of my teaching from past years. But he's smiling, that's a good sign. So again, what I think sometimes we really underestimate the power of open science, open data, open educational resources, open knowledge. This is transformative. And I think at the end of the day, this is our goal. Are we transforming lives through what we offer to our constituencies? Are we helping them become more successful through our products, services, or knowledge? If we can achieve these goals, then we can say, yes, we have impact on the ground. Otherwise, it's maybe only talk. So I wanted to advance here. This is the accessibility, of course, of online services. but also improving digital literacy. This is our program on what you call MIL, Media and Information Literacy in the Digital Age. How can we make the users of digital platforms become media and information literate in today's digital age? And sometimes they say in the 60s and 70s, the world over, we were taught, I was a student at the time, or a pupil, we were taught foreign languages. We saw foreign languages as important skill or competency to have if you want to enhance your career down the road. But today, information and media literacy in the digital age is so important because everything is happening online. Have we developed critical mindset among pupil students so they can distinguish between the fact-checked information and the fake news? Otherwise, themselves become amplifiers of disinformation. They read something, they like, they share, and they amplify it. So we need today to teach this in schools, in universities, and in cities. We have the concept of MIL cities. When I take the train or the metro or the bus to go from A to B, there is captive attention. What messages do we give? One of the messages is think critically, click wisely. But before you click, think critically. So simple messages that I think can help us create not only the right supply of information through the platforms, but the right usage of information among people, in particular the youth. Professor Tom is telling me I'm down to 2 minutes, so I have to skip a number of things maybe. Move to the call for action. This is truly, a multi-stakeholder approach. Nobody can do it, nobody can succeed alone. We need, of course, governments, we need international organizations like UNESCO, we need the tech companies, we need academia research institutions, we need indigenous communities. We have to join forces if we want really to achieve this meaningful impact on the ground, and this is something very, very important. So my conclusion, since I'm down to 60 seconds, we strongly believe that linguistic diversity is not just a technical challenge to be solved. It is a cultural treasure to be cherished. And the goal must go, and the two goals should go hand in hand. Yes, there are some technical challenges. This morning, again, we heard excellent progress towards that. The technical solutions from keyboards to software to scripts, etc. But we need also to keep in mind this is about humanity's cultural heritage. This is to be cherished, to be preserved, to be safeguarded. And every language should be heard, should be valued, should be preserved for generations to come. And this, I think, ties nicely with the mission of UNESCO. Some of you may say, we didn't know that UNESCO works on this. Well, we have been working on this for more than 3 decades. Maybe we haven't been communicating enough. But where does it fit in the mandate of UNESCO? UNESCO, as you may know, was created 80 years ago, 1945, after the Second World War. What was the mission of UNESCO? Build peace in the minds of men and women. How? Through education, culture, the sciences, information, and communication. Everything happens in the minds of people, of men and women. How can we build the defenses of peace in their minds? And of course, languages play a key role in culture, in civilization, in people conversing with each other, and that's the overall anchoring of the work we do in that mission from 8 decades ago. Thank you very much. And allow me, Professor Tom, to offer you a small gift, a UNESCO recent book, which is called What Makes Us a Human? It's Languages. It's a very nicely put together publication, but when I give you this, you know, in preparation, I thought, Professor Tom, he's a very smart person. He may say, languages, how about large language models? They're not for humans, they're for AI systems. But I'll let you reflect on that question.